Hi, it's Mike with AskTractorMike.com. I have two letters from two viewers today talking about lifting weight in the front end loader. And at the end of the video, I'm going to go over my thoughts on this matter, but you may have had different experiences. If you've had an experience related to the topic, put it in the comments at the end. And let's do a little kind of a mini forum here about front end loaders and when have you picked up too much weight? And how do you prevent that? And what happens when you do it? How can you be safe when you're picking up close to the maximum amount of weight the loader is rated for? First question comes from Scott, and Scott says, how can you tell if you're carrying too much weight? He says, as a new tractor owner, I'm concerned about damaging the loader. It's fine to know that my John Deere 2032R can handle 803 pounds at 19.7 inches forward of the pivot point to maximum height. But when I'm moving around boulders or a bucket full of bricks, and I'm concerned about how much they weigh, how do I know when I've got too much? And he says, there's been a couple of times when I've lifted what seems like a heavy load and I see some wobble of the bucket, meaning there's a bounce-like motion of the bucket around the attachment points, possibly the pins. What's your thoughts on the matter? Well, let's answer that one first and then we'll get to the second one. Scott, usually, if you're trying to pick up a heavy weight from the ground, the tractor is only designed to lift about what the front end loader is capable of. And so if you're trying to lift more than that, or let's say you've got your bucket under a stump and you're trying to dig out one corner of it, and there's more resistance there than the lift capacity of the tractor, one of two things will happen. Either it won't lift it at all and the hydraulic system will go over relief and it just won't happen. It'll make a noise and not lift anything. Or if I have, and I'll show a picture of it here in a minute, lifted a weight that was right on the bubble of being too much weight for the tractor, and you get it off the ground and then all of a sudden the back end of the tractor comes off the ground. That'll wake you up really quickly. It feels like you're going to turn over, and there's possibility you could if you were on a slope. The thing I've seen people mostly damage their loaders doing is whenever they're trying to dig something out of the ground and it won't come out, and they may have gotten underneath a corner of it and they've tried to lift a tree root or a big rock and everything is stopped, and so they'll back up and run into it. And to me, that's when I've seen the most damage from front end loaders is one of two ways: either a sudden impact into the front end loader, and that's not good. This is not a skid loader or a backhoe. It's a tractor, and those loader arms are long and they're generally hollow tubes, and if you hit a sudden impact, you can tweak that thing. The other way I've seen it happen is when you get a heavy weight on one corner of the bucket and you lift up the back end of the tractor, or you put enough ballast on the back end that you bend something, you can tweak that loader. And you'll know you've done it when you lay that loader bucket down and it's higher on one end than it is on the other. And then you've got a real problem. And hopefully somebody that's really good with metal can put a bunch of weight in that and bend it back down. We had a guy in our shop that could actually untweak a loader, but there's an art to it, and not everybody can do it. So to answer your question, Scott, I don't think you've got much to worry about. If you pick the weight up off the ground, you're probably okay. You're not going to damage the loader arms. I've never seen a set of loader arms damaged by picking up a weight, like a scoop of gravel or rock or a boulder or whatever. I've not seen anybody pick it up and then have it in the air and it bend the loader. But I have seen picking up on the corner or ramming something. I've seen that damage the loader many times. Now let's get to question number two, and this is kind of more safety related. And this comes from Jack. And Jack says, my John Deere 5055 was delivered late in March. First loader full of I think it's pig mulch, which probably was wet and heavy on slightly uneven ground, went bad. I felt the uphill side start to lift. With a new tractor with a cab, even with the tractor with a cab, I was scared to death. The loader is rated to pick up 3,000 pounds. The tires were fluid filled, but Jack had to act quickly to keep from maybe turning the tractor over. And so he got the load down, and he said, my dealer never talked about this subject before he took delivery of the tractor. So even with everything right, with fluid in the tires and lifting what's within the lift capacity of the tractor, especially on uneven ground, you can get into trouble. So let's talk about how to prevent this. And I've seen this many times when you're trying to lift up just right on the bubble of the maximum lift capacity of the loader. I'll never forget when I managed a dealership, we got a Great Plains drill in, and the truck driver showed up early in the morning while the shop guys were sitting around drinking coffee. So a bunch of them decided they'd go out and unload it. We had a JCB forklift, pretty heavy JCB forklift. This Great Plains drill, I think it was 20, maybe 20 foot wide, so it was tippy, and they were trying to unload it. It was right at the lift capacity of the forklift. And when I drove in the driveway, there were our biggest, heaviest shop guys on the back of the JCB trying to offset the weight of the drill, and I'm like, oh man, I can't look at this. I know this is going to end badly. And as they were backing up just a really slight grade, and sure enough, they got in trouble. And we had to fix a lot of damage on a Great Plains drill because they were right at the lift capacity of the loader. So what you can do to prevent that, first, like Jack said, you want ballast, fluid in the tires. You may want to put an implement on the back of the tractor, a box blade or a cutter, just to kind of offset that front weight. But if you're on hills, weight up in the air can be a real problem. Now, Jack did the right thing. When he felt the tractor getting tippy, he let that load down. So rule number one, always have your hand on that joystick if you're on uneven ground with a heavy weight in the bucket. And if anything starts to happen, get that load down to the ground and carry the load as low as you can. Now, where I've been the closest in my life to getting in trouble is doing what my shop guys were doing with that Great Plains drill. Let's say you buy a 3-point implement to put on your tractor, and your back end will lift up usually about twice what your front end will. That's not always exactly right, but figure that. And so we know an implement goes on the back of the tractor can weigh a lot more than one that goes on the front. So you're trying to unload it. It's sitting maybe on its back, or it's sitting on a pallet, and maybe on the freight truck, when it pulls up, the implement is on the front part of the pallet. So you get your forks under it, and you can pick it up, but as you start to back up, especially if you're backing up a little grade whatsoever, everything is trying to turn you forward. Your wheels are going back, and that's putting pressure to pull the load down. And if the front end or the rear end of the tractor is going up the hill, that's going to try to tip that load down. And if you've got right at the maximum lift capacity, and maybe it picked it up fine, but when you go back, it starts to come down. It can come down fast. You can throw it into the freight truck, you can drop it off the end. Lots of bad things can happen. So what I recommend people do, and most of you have been around tractors know to do this, if you're unloading a freight truck and you get it an inch off the deck, have the freight truck drive away, and then just ever so slowly drop it down. And on a non-self-leveling loader, which most of our tractors are, you got to remember, as you're bringing it down, you're pulling your bucket up to keep it level. You're adjusting your tilt and curl to keep the load level, because on a non-self-leveling loader, as you come down, you're going to want to unload that load off the end of your forks. So as you're especially unloading off a freight truck, you've got to lift your load up and drop it down, lift it up, drop it down, and adjust that as you go down. And slower the better, especially if you're new to tractors. So take it easy. So the three things I tell you: always keep your hand on that joystick ready to drop that load, because I'd a lot rather see you drop a load and maybe it comes off the fork than to turn over the tractor, because that's the biggest danger. Number two, when you can, carry your load low, and have the freight truck drive away and then gradually drop your load. And remember, if you got a self-leveling loader, it'll stay level all the way down, but if you don't, you gotta raise up the end of it and let it down gradually to get that off. So to answer your question, the first question, Scott, I don't think you're going to damage your loader with weight in the bucket. I don't think you're going to bend your mainframes or anything. But if you've had a different experience, put it in the comments down below. I don't think we'll have anybody comment that they had a load in their bucket and they were just carrying it around and they bent their loader arms. I've never heard of that. I wouldn't rule it out, but I've never heard of it. But if you've had a bad experience with a loader on uneven ground, or you're unloading a truck or something like that, put that in the comments down below, and maybe we'll help somebody else stay safe. Appreciate you guys watching my videos. If you'd like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, I'd be honored. Click the mic face icon and check the bell so you're notified when I post future videos. If you'd like to find unique items for the tractor owner, go to my website and the Tractor Fun Store. And here's a video about ballast that you probably should watch. Thanks for watching.